Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. It was mentioned earlier in the show, but Patrisse Cullors, who is one of the founders of Black Lives Matter, in a 2015 interview, had this to say about herself and one of her co-founders, Alicia Garza, Black Lives Matter.
I think of a lot of things. The first thing I think is that we actually do have an ideological frame. Myself and Alicia in particular are trained organizers. We are trained Marxists. We are super versed on sort of ideological theories. And I think that what we really try to do is build a movement that could be utilized by many, many Black folk.
Right. This is about incorporating Black folk, as she says, into Marxist ideology. It is not about police brutality in the limited sense. It is not about any other issue, educational opportunity, economic opportunity. It is about an ideological movement that has been afoot in this country since Marx and Engels wrote their Reader, and that is Marxism. It is cultural as well as economic in nature. It was advanced in various fashions by Democrat socialist candidates for president, most notably Bolshevik Bernie Sanders. Ultimately, it was rejected, not because that's not where the left is in this country, and by extension, the Democrat Socialist Party, but because it wasn't sellable to a general electorate. And this is when the left moved in to knock Bernie Sanders out of the box and prop Joe Biden up. Conservatives should be don't be deluding yourselves into thinking, oh, we took Bernie Sanders out. We stopped Marxism from being on the ballot in November. No, you didn't.
No, I didn't. No.
They recognize they can't get it through the front door. They have to get it through the back door with bumbling and stumbling and fumbling Joe Biden. It's still here. And that's the ideological, that's the ideology behind what you're seeing playing itself out on the streets of America at present. Don't believe me. Believe one of the founders of the Black Lives Matter organization in her own words. And this is what perhaps the last bastion of Western civilization is standing up to. At least the last bastion of civilization and higher education, or it soon may be. Probably a handful of others remaining. We talked to a professor for one of them, Grove City College, earlier in the program. A June 18th letter from the leaders of Hillsdale College that the Wall Street Journal picked up, responding to alumni and others that have taken up formal and public means to assist that Hillsdale College issue statements concerning recent events. The letter from the leaders of Hillsdale College, starting with President Larry Yarn, suggests the college is charged with negligence or worse for not commenting on the social upheaval. The college is told that invoking the high example of the Civil War, Frederick Douglass, is not permitted. The college is guilty of the gravest moral failure for not making declarations about justice and equality. It memorializes the charges. The college is told that it garners no honor now for its abolitionist past. Hillsdale College, founded by abolitionists, for those who don't know. But instead must issue statements today. Statements about what? It must issue statements about the brutal and deadly evil of hating other people and or treating them differently because of the color of their skin. That is, it must issue statements about the very things that move the abolitionists whom the college has ever invoked. We were making the case against that sort of ignorance before it was cool, is essentially what Hillsdale College's leaders are saying, which is true. And it makes this other important point. The college's founding is a statement. The curriculum is a statement. The teaching at Hillsdale College is a statement. The financial help to students who cannot afford even a moderate tuition, that's a statement. Helping private and public schools across the country lift their primary and secondary students out of a sea of disadvantages with excellent instruction, curricula, and the civic principles of freedom and equality, that is a statement. The leadership of Hillsdale College goes on to say there is a kind of virtue that is cheap. It consists of jumping on cost-free bandwagons of public feeling and winning approval by espousing the right opinion. No one who wishes the college to issue statements is assumed to be a party to such behavior, but the fact that very real racial problems are now being cynically exploited for profit gain and public favor by some organizations and people is impossible to overlook. It's a scandal and a shame that compounds our ills and impedes their correction. And ultimately, Hillsdale College won't be a part of it. Good for Hillsdale College. I wish I could say my alma mater or most of our alma maters was party to the Hillsdale College statement, but to say so would be a lie, and we all know it. Johnny Burka is a Hillsdale College graduate. He's also the ED and acting editor of The American Conservative, theamericanconservative.com, and he joins us now. Johnny, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
So you proud of your alma mater for that statement they issued?
I am very proud of my alma mater. As you pointed out, I think actions speak far, far louder than words, and they impact people's lives. And I think if you take a look at the legacy of Hillsdale College, which you laid out quite nicely, a school that was founded by abolitionists, a school that does not and has never discriminated on the basis of race or sex, a school that has welcomed Frederick Douglass to speak on the college's campus historically, and also a school that sent many brave students to fight and even die in the Civil War. They've got a legacy at Hillsdale for standing up for equality in the true sense as it's laid out in our Declaration of Independence, equality of natural rights before God. And they've done a great job preserving that history and that tradition. And to me, the legacy speaks louder than ever in the work that they're doing, promoting statesmen, educators, small business leaders, people that come through the college that go on to do fantastic things, promoting equality in the true sense, equality under the law. So I applaud Dr. Arnn and the administration of Hillsdale College, and I was quite proud of that statement.
What do you think about the response so far to the Marxists that are sort of hiding behind Black Lives Matter facade, the tearing down of monuments indiscriminately, the claims that are being made by the Jacobin left, and the response so far, to the extent there has been one, other than from Tom Cotton on the Senate floor yesterday, from conservatives and from peaceful pluralists across the spectrum. I haven't detected much of a response outside of talk radio and a handful of conservative intellectuals that are not household names.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a good point. I mean, I think ultimately, the impetus for this began, with the killing of George Floyd, which Americans across the spectrum were, justly outraged about. But then this has sort of been pulled in and subsumed into this bigger narrative that you played the recording of the Black Lives Matter activists talking about Marxism. What we really have is the mob mentality that used to be confined to our college campuses. It seems like a breath of fresh air to think that 3 or 4 years ago, when we were talking about social justice warriors, we were talking about a few privileged Yale students, screaming at a professor for a Halloween costume, comment about a Halloween costume. But that mentality has now gone viral, and it's happening in our nation's capital and in our great cities. And I think the silence from Republican leaders stems from fear of the mob. I mean, you see this not only on the issue of Black Lives Matter, but you see when J.K. Rowling, right, the Harry Potter author, when she breaks on the trans issue, and even though she's a feminist, right, she has disagreements with trans ideology, and she gets smeared, and there's an attempt to cancel her. You saw this with Kanye West when he came out supporting the president to push, of all things, criminal justice reform, and he gets labeled as, mentally ill. So it really is what we're up against on multiple fronts is really a new religion. And if you dissent from the religion, you're a heretic, and you need to be canceled or you need to be shamed. And so I think there's a lot of people you described, conservative, Republicans in Congress who are just, they're afraid of being canceled.
Well, what about the tearing down of all the statues? They're trying to erase history. I mean, Ulysses S. Grant, he's credited with ending the Confederacy, and he was given a slave in 1859, but freed him.
Mm-hmm. And Frederick Douglass, the great civil rights activist, perhaps the best, African American orator in all of American history, gave the eulogy at his funeral. So it's really, history is always complicated, but I think the wisdom of conservatism is to try to learn from the past and not tear it down, and to trust that our ancestors got things right and were often wiser than us, and they've handed on things over the generations, and that we would do better for ourselves addressing problems in our society today if we'd learned from their example instead of trying to erase their history. And
let's talk about we got to do some drudgery here too, talk about electoral politics. Your piece of the American Conservative about the rally that could have been regarding Trump's rally, and this was pre the actual rally happening in Tulsa this past weekend, your piece. You write, if we only had a president who could champion the interests of the working and middle classes, both white and black, a president who could stand behind a podium in West Baltimore just as well as Youngstown, Ohio, and blast globalist politicians and hedge fund managers who sold these communities down the river to make a buck off cheap labor from communist China. Well, I mean, if that is your view, then we do have that president still, and he reminded us we have that president. Not that I'm necessarily supportive of this policy. In fact, I'm not. But for those who are, President Trump yesterday handing down the order to suspend H-1B and H-2B visas for the rest of the year, precisely in furtherance of the market position you're describing.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Well, that I did, as you noted, I did write that column prior to hearing that decision and to hearing the rally. But I think the bigger point that I was trying to make is that a lot of the issues, people tried to figure out, okay, what got Trump elected in 2016? And the common narrative is the white working class in the upper Midwest, the industrial jobs went overseas, and, things like addiction and community breakdowns followed. And my argument is basically that those same problems happened in the African-American inner cities, but to an even worse extent in many cases. So I think Trump could tap into that. And I think he's most persuasive when he's, pitching himself as a fighter for ordinary working people. So that's really what I was encouraging him to do there. I do think, he does tend to emphasize the stock market and use the stock market as a barometer of his presidency. And, I have a 401k. Lots of people have a 401k. So I think it's great if the stock market is doing well. But at the same time, I do think we have bigger economic issues in America. You've got only about a third of the population that has a retirement plan with a 401k. You only have 40% of Americans that can meet a $1,000 emergency if something unexpected comes upon them. So I do think, there has been progress in terms of the economy over the last 4 years. But I think Republicans really need to get a handle on how to address some of those issues, or else you're going to see, the radical left, AOC and Bernie continue to gain popularity with a hopefully, it's small, but it's a growing segment of the left.
Yeah, that's a fair criticism.
And Johnny, what did you make of the rally that wasn't President Trump's Saturday campaign kickoff in Tulsa?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was, there were some parts of it that I liked. There were some parts that I think could have been better. I think, ultimately it was the first rally in a few months. So I think we'll really see. I know he's giving a speech in Phoenix today talking about immigration. So I think things are really just, kicking up again. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what comes this fall.
He is Johnny Burka, Executive Director and Acting Editor of The American Conservative, theamericanconservative.com. Johnny Burka, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Listen to podcasts of Dan and Amy from the AM 560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
The number one fear amongst retirees today is running out of money in retirement. And that's with good reason, because the last thing you want to be is 75 years old, full of life, and flat broke. Hi, this is Tom Fortino, host of the Alpha Wealth Hour, heard every Saturday at 9 a.m. here on AM 560. Today, we're living longer than ever before, so your retirement savings has to last 2, 3, even 4 decades. So how do you safely generate more income in retirement without risking everything you've worked for in the stock market? And what can you do to help ensure you never run out of money in retirement? The answer's in our free retirement income planning packet. It's packed full of little-known strategies on how to generate income in retirement, getting the most from Social Security, minimize taxes, and reduce the risk of outliving your income. You don't need to take unnecessary risks to generate income in retirement, and I'll prove it to you. You have a lot more options to generate income in retirement. You just didn't know they existed until now. Call the Alpha Wealth Group, 630-519-4742 right now to receive your free report. That's 630